Good morning, students. My name is Vikas Juyal, and I'm a research scholar and an assistant professor in SPRC Degree College. Today, we are going to start with a lecture on The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, which is one of the greatest modern literature, modern poetry. The Wasteland is divided into five parts, but today we are going to study the very first part of the poem titled The Burial of the Dead. Now, T.S. Eliot was inspired to write this poem after reading Jessie Weston's book called The Ritual to Romance and James Fraser's The Golden Bough. Now, there are certain mythical elements which are very important to know if you want to read this poem, if you want to understand this poem. Now, the very first myth goes like this. This is a myth of a fisher king whose kingdom became desolate and it turned into a wasteland after him and his soldiers were involved in sexual sins. In the same manner, the modern wasteland or the modern wastelanders, due to their sexual sins and due to their life of pleasure, they have turned the modern world into a modern wasteland. Now, the epigraph of the poem, now coming or starting with the poem starts with the epigraph. Now, this epigraph is written in Latin and Greek, but I'm going to translate it for you in English. Now, the epigraph goes like this. For I once saw with my own eyes the Cumean Sibyl hanging in a jar, and when the boys asked her, Sibyl, what do you want? She answered, I want to die. Now, this epigraph was taken by T.S. Eliot from Satyricon, which was written by Petronius. Now, through this epigraph, T.S. Eliot wants us to understand that the modern wasteland is somehow like the life of a Sibyl. Life, you know, living like a zombie somehow. Life which is living like a living death, life of death. And this death is spiritual rather than physical. Now, starting with the poem, first we have to understand that this poem is written in fragments, so it is quite difficult to understand the poem. Now, in order to bind us with a connection, T.S. Eliot has beautifully taken a mythical person by the name of Tiresias. Now, Tiresias has a lot of stories, be it in Oedipus Rex or the other mythical stories as well. So, few of the stories I'm going to state in this lecture, and the first story goes like this. Now, once Tiresias was, he saw snakes copulating, and he started disturbing their copulation with a stick. Now, the snakes, he saw it, and he transformed him into a woman. Now, after a few time, he again disturbed the copulation of snakes, and snake again turned him into a man. Now, Tiresias, he lived a life of a woman as well as a man. So he has lived both these lives. He has experienced both of the humanity. Now, when Jove, one of the god, he asked Tiresias that who is more passionate, man or woman? So Tiresias replied that women are more passionate. Angered with this statement, Jove struck him blind. He became blind, but he was given a prophetic vision through which he could see the future as well as the past. So now Tiresias has got a prophetic vision. He has this prophetic vision, and now T.S. Eliot wants us to see that how Tiresias is connecting all these fragments into one. He has experienced both the past and the future. He has experienced both parts of the humanity. So now Tiresias will be able to become a unifying factor in this long poem. Now we will begin with the first part of the wasteland called The Burial of the Dead. Now this title has been taken from the Anglican book of the Common Prayer when they bury a dead person. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Now notice how T.S. Eliot has described April as a month not so favorable for the wastelanders, as they see April as the month when regeneration takes place, when out of the dead land lilacs they bloom or the other flowers they bloom. Now this month reminds the wastelanders of their own spiritual death. Now they do not want to be indulged in some actions because regeneration it requires some sort of action. And now the wastelanders they do not like these actions, and that is the reason why they love winter. In winter, they are comfortably indulged in the love making, or they are indulged in some sort of activities which keeps them warm. So now in the other lines he has mentioned memories and desires. Now they have the memories of the past and they have the desire for a future, and without the spirituality they cannot hope for a brighter future. So the winter season is liked by the modern wastelanders because when the winter comes and the earth is covered in dead snow, white in snow, they forget the regeneration. They forget about their own spiritual death and they lie like a dead person. So, in the very first lines, we see that the modern wastelanders, how they see the seasons, how they see the spiritual regeneration, and how they see themselves as dead people who are spiritually dead and not they do not have any interest in spiritually awakening again. Now, in the other lines, summer surprised us, coming over the strand burgers. With a shower of rain, we stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hof Garden. Now see all these places, name of places like Stranded Burgess, Colonnade or Hof Garden. I might be butchering the name. These names are in German, but still, when we hear these names, these are the name places. And he says the summer surprises coming over the Stranded Burgess with a shower of rain. Now rain is again the symbol of regeneration because when the rain comes, all these flowers and all these plants they grow again, so it is a symbol of regeneration and they do not like it, so that is why they are surprised. And went on in sunlight into the Hof Garden and drank coffee and walked for an hour. So they went out in the sunlight because they are not comfortable with the rain, so they went out and for an hour they talked. Now these other lines are written in German language, so I might be butchering the language, so that is the reason why I won't be speaking these lines, but I would translate it. In these lines, he says that there is a girl, she is a character, and she says that she's not a Russian girl, she is a German because she's from Lithuania. Now she describes an event from her life, and we can see Tiresias is a person who is listening to her conversation. We can imagine that. Now she says that when we were children staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. Now, this person who is a German person, she says that, you know, she, with her cousin, she went out on a sled in the snow. She was frightened. So his cousin, he says that please hold me tight. Now this scene, it might give us hint that how in the very young age they are involved in a sexual activity and how they are getting gratification or satisfaction out of these sexual activities which are considered by T.S. Eliot as something which is spiritually dead persons they do. So these kind of activities, because sex is we can see that, or we can say that sex is kind of a process of regeneration, but now we are taking sex as a form of pleasure making or enjoyment. So she says further that she feels free in the mountains where she is covered with the mountains from all sides, and she is kind of in a cocoon where she is doing all the bad deeds or all the things for pleasure she wants to do, and she doesn't want to seen in the public. She feels free in this kind of environment. I read much of the night and go south in the winter, so she goes south for seeking pleasure. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images. Where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Now, what are the roots of the clutch? What branches grow? There are no roots to which we could clutch. Earlier, faith, religion was something to which we could hold on and we could find the answers of the question. But now we do not have that spirituality, we do not have that guide or that guru who could guide us. Now we are like images of, broken images, fragmentation. We are living our life in fragments. We do not know what we seek, we do not know where we are going. And he further states that where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, now the trees are all dead. And remember, these are not physical trees, but rather these trees are of spirituality. We do not have any, shade of a guru, of a spiritual mentor, or of God. We are missing these things in the modern times. And the dry stone, no sound of water, so there is no relief whatsoever. Only there is a shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock. And now, what is this red rock? This is the red rock of faith, of spirituality. Now, why is this rock red? Because, as we know in Christianity, Jesus Christ, he died on the cross. So, this rock might be red because of the blood of the Jesus Christ. So, now the poet offers a refuge to the modern people, and that refuge is coming under the shade of the red rock, or coming under the shade of faith or spirituality. Now, going further, your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Now, this handful of dust, it describes the mortality of a human, and the shadow in the morning. The morning signifies, when a person is young, and there are a lot of possibilities of future in front of his eyes, right? And in the evening, evening signifies the end of a life when a person gets old. So when a person gets old, his life is coming to an end, and he has a lot of fear inside his heart. The fear that he was not able to live a life of spirituality, of finding God, of finding spiritual truth. Now then, there are further two extracts, one of a Hyacinth girl, and the other incident is taken from the Wagner's opera Tristan and Isolde. In these four lines are written in German. I will translate it for you in English. These lines goes as follows. The wind blows fresh from the homeland. The homeland is Ireland. Where are you lingering? Now here a lover is waiting, for the reply of his lover. Now, reading further, you gave me hyacinth first a year ago. They called me a hyacinth girl. Yet when we come back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing. Looking into the heart of light, the silence, and then there is again line from Wagner opera. Oid und leer das Meer. These lines are in German, of course, and it means desolate and empty is the sea. As the lover is waiting, just lying beside the sea and waiting for his lover to come, but he never arrives. Now, this is the result of a guilty love. In the matter of Hyacinth Girl, was involved in a sexual act with her lover, and this sexual act, this guilty love, it brings out no satisfaction, no gratification. It leads to nothing. There is just emptiness, and there is nothing else. Here T.S. Eliot wants us to show that the love outside of marriage, love outside of the sacred bond of marriage, it bears no fruits, it bears nothing. rather the society, the whole humanity, it brings out emptiness and nothing. This purity of sexual act has now become guilty love, and this guilty love bears no fruits, bears nothing, and both of these incidents are trying to point out at that. Hyacinth, it often symbolizes, hyacinth is basically a flower, and it symbolizes in this line as a sensuous act of loving which is only meant for the sake of pleasure, and there is nothing else in that. Now reading further, Madame Sosostris, famous clairvoyante means a fortune teller, had a bad cold. Nevertheless, is known to be the wisest woman in Europe. Now, this is an irony. Though she has a bad cold, she doesn't have an answer for that bad cold, but she is considered to be the most wisest woman in Europe because she can predict the future of the other people. Now, this is the reality of the modern times. Now, further, with a wicked pack of cards, she has a deck of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Now, the Phoenician sailor, he symbolizes, the god of fertility. So now the god of fertility is drowned, so there is no regeneration possible in that scenario. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look, here is Belladonna, the Lady of the Rocks. Now, this Belladonna, Lady of the Rocks, is of course taken from a famous painting by one of the famous painter called Leonardo da Vinci. And Belladonna is also mentioned in the other parts as well. Now, Belladonna is considered to be the a woman of sexual intrigues, and this is painting the picture, trying to paint the picture of the modern times. Now, the above lines are often are taken from one of the famous play of Shakespeare called The Tempest. Now, these lines are, those are pearls that were his eyes. Look, these lines are said by the Ariel, of course, to Ferdinand, and these lines are symbolizing that the regeneration, the regenerative capability that used to happen through water, now in the modern times it cannot happen now. Now there is no regeneration, and a person, when he's dead, he faces emptiness and nothing else. He is now no more changed into pearls like in earlier times, so there is no hope or the no possibility of any future. Now reading further, the Lady of Situations, here is the man with three staves, and here the wheel, and here is the one-eyed merchant, and this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. Right? Now, in this, the Lady of Situations, here he's trying to say that there is another card which is of a man with three staves, and now this man is also known as Kingfisher. Now, we have already talked about Kingfisher and how Kingfisher, he is symbolizing somehow the degenerate humanity. Now, the humanity has sinked quite low, and here the wheel. Now, the wheel is round, circular. So humanity is trying to do some sort of effort, but it is leading to nowhere. As in a circle, when we start from that place and at the end we end at the very same place, so there this effort, circular effort, is a vain effort, bearing no fruit and leading to nothing. And here is one-eyed merchant. Now this one-eyed merchant, this, there is a very famous story of a merchant who bought in sexuality and spirituality in Europe. But now, as his spirituality is gone, now only one eye remains, and that eye is of sexuality. Now the Europe is filled with sexual act, and everyone is busy in sexual gratification. But as we have already read in the incident of Hyacinth Curl, that love is guilty, that love does not have anything and it just have the emptiness behind it and nothing else, and it is kind of a guilty love. And then she says, which is blank is something he carries on his back. Now that blank card which the merchant carries, which Madame Sosostris is not able to see, that blank card, it signifies the religion. She cannot see, the modern man cannot see that card, the modern woman cannot see that card. That card to them appears to be empty because religion for them is quite empty, and they are not able to see the spiritual truth. Now, further it says, the hanged man feared death by water. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you if you see dear Mrs. Equitone. Tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. Careful of what? Careful of, because during those times, seeing the fortune telling was considered to be, it was punishable. So that is why the government was behind them, and so that is why she's very fearful of this practice. And now in the further line, there are other cards also mentioned. One card is mentioned of the hanged man. Now this hanged man could be either Jesus Christ, or that hanged man could be, the god of fertility. Now both these cards are now no more, they are no more appearing. Now they are no more visible to the modern man. Now then in the further line, he says that he sees crowds of people, they're walking around in a ring. Now this ring is appearing again. Now this ring is of, the life of a Londoner. How the life of a Londoner is dull, is of no significance. They are just, coming out of their cubicles, coming out from their offices, and then going again and living that dull routine without any goal, without any, without leading to nowhere. It is leading to nowhere. They are just living their dull and boring life. So that life is, beautifully uh, told by T.S. Eliot, is leading to nowhere. It is just a circular conundrum, circular confusion that is going on, leading to nowhere. Then she further says she thanks Mrs. Equaton, who might be a customer, and she is telling that she will bring the horoscope herself, as she doesn't want to be caught by the police, as this practice was considered illegal during those times. Unreal city, under the brown fog of a winter dawn. A crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many. I had not thought death had undone so many. Now, this line, I had not thought death had undone so many, has been taken from Dante's famous work called Inferno. Sighs short and infrequent were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet. Now, in these lines, the writer, or the speaker or the poet, which is Tiresias, is talking about the unreal city that he's observing. Now, this unreal city might be London, or Paris, or any other European capital that was infested with, the lack of spirituality or the emptiness. Now he further states, he says that the crowd is flowing over the London Bridge. Now there are a lot of people who are just on the London Bridge. A lot of population, a lot of people are roaming on the London Bridge. And then he says that I had not thought that had undone so many, that these many people, these many dead people are walking. So death has affected so many people. Tiresias didn't know that. Now going further, he says sighs short and infrequent were exhaled, and there were a lot of sighs, a lot of heavy breath were, people were breathing quite heavily, and they were very much disturbed, and they were not, on at one place. Rather, their mind was so disturbed that they are just living a life of impurity. Now after that, he says, flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. Now, the more modern wastelanders, they are living a very monotonous life where they do not have any, aim, or they do not have any goal, or they do not have any spiritual path to follow. They are just living a very monotonous life where at the strike of 9, it symbolizes for them that they have to go to the work, they have to return to their daily life. These people are ordinary people who work in the cubicles, who work in the offices, who works in the, in the industries, and these people are just living for the sake of living, for the sake of surviving, and there is nothing more than that. Then there I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Mile, that copse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has this sudden frost disturbed in bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence. That's friend to man. Or with his nails he will dig it up again. You hypocrite lecture, mon semblable, mon frere. Now, in these lines, as we can see that, you know, Tiresias, he meets a friend called Stetson. Now, this friend, they were friends, they met while they were, during a war between Carthage and Rome. Now they have met again, and Tiresias asks him a question that where is the corpse? Now, corpse, it might symbolize dead, that spirituality, the spirituality that has been dead in the modern wasteland. So now he says, where is that corpse? Have you buried it? Has it sprouted yet? What is its condition right now? And he's very eager to know the condition of that corpse. Is it bearing any flowers or any fruits? And he says, he warns rather, that dogs should be kept away, as dogs are the friends of humans. So dog, it symbolizes human consciousness, who is trying to be spiritual, who is trying to find the answers. So he warns that dog are men's friend, so they will dig up the corpse, which will be very harmful for him, because a spiritual dead person is enjoying his not enjoying but living a very sensuous and life filled with pleasure. He doesn't care for the spiritual truth, for the spiritual freedom. So he says dogs should be kept away, otherwise they will dig out the corpse. And in the last lines it translates that rather it is a warning to Tiresias, in which he says, you hypocrite, you liar, you are like me, you are my brother. So all the desolate humanity, all the desolate human beings who are living a spiritual dead life, they all are one. They do not have any difference among them. They all are living a one single monotonous life, without any spirituality, without any presence of any honesty, any truth. And everyone is living a very deceptive life. Thank you so much. Now in the further videos we will see the other parts of the wasteland. The second, third, and fourth and fifth part will be covered in the next session of this lecture.